Matt, as you know, portal numbers have increased exponentially since the portal era began 5 years ago. What are the early expectations for how hectic this cycle could be?
Pretty hectic. Definitely expecting to be busy these next couple of months. So for me, I keep a running tab this time of year, just different names that are coming up on my end through conversations with coaches, people at the personnel level around the country. And during the course of the last couple of weeks, it's become more and more clear that not only is this going to be another eventful portal cycle, but specifically my expectation at this point is that we're going to see a number of veteran, accomplished quarterbacks that ultimately make the move and go into the portal, including some guys that entered this season with draftable grades from the NFL.
Matt, I think now we're all familiar with the recruiting cycle, right? I know that the transfer portal is a thing that happens and everyone is seasoned now. I think they know what to expect. And I think that's also contributed to the number of portal entries. But the coaching carousel is another thing that also impacts things. How do you think the current situation with coaching changes could impact the portal?
A&M's an easy one to look at, right? So there are a lot of staffs around the country, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, that are very much monitoring that situation and roster at Texas A&M. And I can tell you just through some conversations that I've had the last couple of days with staffers at some high-level places around the country that they are very much monitoring. And some of those high-level places around the country are very much monitoring the likes of Evan Stewart, Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, LT Overton, some of those talented former five-star recruits that have done good stuff at A&M the last couple of years, just in case those guys do ultimately make the move and go into the portal.
A quick reminder, please like this video and subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Matt, there's at least 5 head coaching openings right now. So as we shift silly season into higher gear, what are some other coaching jobs that could open in the near future that may affect the action we see in the transfer portal?
Yeah, so an obvious one to keep an eye on going into this weekend. So our UCLA site obviously reported in the last couple of days just about the likelihood of Chip Kelly being out at UCLA. And I'd say an interesting individual situation to keep an eye on regarding that is their 5-star freshman quarterback, Dante Moore. So Dante had kind of an interesting situation even before these recent developments with Chip, where he took over as the starter early in the year. I think it was game 2 that he stepped in as their starting quarterback, started 5 games. It was up and down, and then was ultimately benched. And obviously that's never an ideal or easy situation for a quarterback and his family and all to deal with. And it's never a good sign when a kid's parents are retweeting fans on Twitter, sharing their thoughts on the quarterback situation and questioning just the handling of that. So that had become an interesting and weird situation to a certain degree, even before these recent developments with Chip. But one thing that I can say very confidently right now is just that there are definitely some staffs around the country that are keeping an eye on that situation with Dante specifically. And I think that's picked up even more now just with these recent developments with Chip, because even though Dante had been up and down during his time as a starter, and I think had almost as many interceptions as he had touchdown passes, still is talented enough that it was ranked among the top 5 overall players in this past recruiting class. And I don't think schools around the country have lost sight of just the ability and potential that he has for moving forward, and did flash some during his time as a starter.
That would be a huge name in the transfer portal if Dante Moore eventually ends up in there. And you mentioned UCLA, Chip Kelly, the move that could be happening, and that's according to our UCLA site, Bruin Report Online. Who are some names, Matt, that maybe you've heard affiliated with the Bruins? Because we know you have your ear to the streets.
Yeah, a couple of the big ones right now, I would say, are Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. It's a very popular name right now because not only is Jonathan coming up on my end with UCLA, but is coming up with Michigan State also to go along with the Mike Elkos of the world. But I would say with UCLA, Jonathan, Jedd Fisch are two of the early ones coming up on my end. I'd be curious if somebody like Lane Kiffin ultimately was a possibility for that also. So Lane obviously has ties to LA. I'm sure Lane wouldn't mind getting a chance to face off against his old school, USC. And obviously LA is an ideal place to live. And I think Lane enjoyed his time out there just from a living standpoint. But at the same time, two of the main names that have come up early on with that one have been a combination of Jonathan Smith and then Jedd Fisch, who's done a great job at Arizona to go along with that.
Matt, before we let you go, we have a quick viewer question from Jonathan. He asks, who will be the next head coach of Texas A&M football?
It's a popular question right now.
Right.
So a couple of the names that have come up the last couple of days for me, and by no means am I saying that either one of these are going to end up getting the job, but Jeff Traylor is somebody who to me clearly seems to be on the radar at the very least for A&M. Jeff is universally loved in the state of Texas, obviously just an extremely respected figure in that state. It seems like it's potentially even reached a point where there's maybe been some preliminary communication there. Lance Leipold's another one at Kansas, has done a heck of a job there. It seems to be another one who maybe is on the early radar for A&M. And then you have said some interesting names like Dabo at Clemson who have come up where I'm not sure where things stand with that and just how realistic it is that somebody like Dabo could be a possibility. But one interesting note with Dabo specifically that one of my colleagues, John Talty, brought up is that Dabo played at Alabama under Gene Stallings, former Alabama and Texas A&M head coach Gene Stallings, began his coaching career under Gene at Alabama. Gene was a member of the Board of Regents at Texas A&M. So you have that connection there where it makes it a little bit more interesting with Dabo, who's reached that point at Clemson where obviously things have been up and down the last couple of years. Sometimes you reach a point in life, regardless of how great a situation has been, where it's refreshing to get just a fresh start. And I think you guys know when you deal with coaching searches to the level of a Texas A&M or even going back a couple of years ago, like USC and LSU, when you're dealing with these high level places, there are different names that will come up, but it's funny how things have a way similar to those two searches I mentioned, where at the end of the process, you ultimately have some huge name that administration clearly wanted to make a significant splash, and somebody who you weren't necessarily expecting to be available at the beginning of the process or to end up at that place ultimately ends up there. So I don't know if that ends up happening with A&M, but it's just something that I'm keeping in mind, just knowing the caliber of job that is.
Lots of intriguing options. Matt Zenitz with the latest. Thanks so much, and welcome to the team. For more of his work, you can find him on Twitter at @mzenitz or read his articles on 247sports.com. And for all the transfer portal news you can handle, our Transfer Portal Palooza is back on the 247 Sports YouTube channel December 4th when that first portal window opens. Our panel of experts is live starting at 10 a.m. Eastern all morning, all afternoon. And then we're back with another marathon show for National Signing Day, December 20th. Subscribe to youtube.com/247sports. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a show from us.